Hello, my friends. Well, today I'm making another video. I made a blog about this, but I figure I'd make a video so those that are not very keen for reading will be able to benefit from this as well. Now, uh, I read from a CNA newsletter in which it is advertised that Bishop Barron, much like Bishop Strickland, you may have heard me speak about him before. Okay, he's not very happy with the latest synodial conclusions that the Pope and his brother bishops came up with. This is in reference to the moral standing of homosexuality and, in the short, of the whole LGBTQ community. Okay, it is sad to see that people who are supposed to represent Christ's teachings, would reduce it to a simple, it is my deposit of faith. Authorities such as Bishop Barron and Strickland continue without understanding the fact that Christian morality can't be static. And it is a shame that it is I that have to remind them of that. This is why Christ was crucified. It boggles my mind, He was advertising the kingdom of heaven, and he challenged the written laws and tradition of that day. That's why he was crucified. This is the essence of Christ, challenging laws and tradition in the name of love and charity towards the poor, the weak, the segregated, in the name of God or otherwise. Because remember, segregation of people because they did not fit in the church was not strange to the Jewish community. This was the case with the lepers. They were supposed to have offended God, but Jesus walked amongst them and he challenged the Jewish point of view. And it's not just that he challenged the point of view, the Jewish point of view is that he challenged the traditions and the laws, because it was written in the law. Now, Christ's morality challenges all written laws. This is why he forgives the so-called prostitute. He speaks to the Samaritan to the Samaritan in the well, who had gone through 7 husbands, and yet he does not condemn her, nor does he deny her content. Christ does question in his day the hierarchy, the rabbis and the scribes, where does sin actually come from? That is the thing when he's questioned about why was this man born blind, right? In John 9, 1 through 38, says we need to remember in those days, illness was believed to be a result of offending God. Illness, poverty, whatnot. It is not without consequence. He questions all morality, because the man that was born blind could not be said to be ill for offending God. He was born that way. And he could not be said to be ill because of the sins of his parents, because then God would be unjust. The essence of that was men sometimes are just born different. Now, Jesus presents a genuine question. What to do when God makes you that way? Different. Now, the conservative community was not very happy about the situation, nor about Jesus' solution, because it all placed in question their morality at the time. Today we are in the same situation, except we don't have a way to heal or change the situation that God made. It is without surprise to me that conservatives who are not in touch with the spirit of Jesus' doctrine try to hide behind all morality writings and traditions and reject the essence of love your neighbor as yourself. It is the one thing they don't want. Place yourself in their shoes. That is the thing that Jesus essentially asks us to do. It is the old doctrines that used to claim so many mistakes that were held up by conservatives, which led to horrible results. After so many decades of crusades, inquisitions, burnings, false and failed religious accusations, it seems that some in the hierarchy are still blind to Jesus' ideology of love and acceptance. Jesus did not leave a bunch of writings. He did not write. People wrote about him 30 to 70 years after he died, but we'll talk about that later. He left the Holy Spirit, which is supposed to be dynamic. Many people in the hierarchy seem to have a problem with this. It seems to me that more because of hubris than because of any genuine love for Jesus' doctrine. The Holy Spirit does not call for war, rejection, nor any kind of physical violence upon others, but rather tolerance, love, and acceptance. Now, in Leviticus 11:12 and thereabouts, it speaks about many foods which were in the time morally unacceptable to God. They were an abomination. Yeah, we don't seem to care much about that anymore because we learn how to cook such food. We learned that they were not really unacceptable, nor were they a sin, but just something that they could not do safely back in those days, so they figured it must be God. Homosexuality seems to be something that was not understood at some point and not properly translated at other moments. However, today, conservatives just refuse to accept that it is not immoral. It is just different. It does not offend God any more than eating shrimp, because they were both an abomination. So if shrimp is not an abomination, neither is homosexuality. Now, we have these people that believe that morality depends on sexuality, which is nothing further from the truth. They claim if you only stop sexual deviant behavior, the world would be fine. Well, Jesus had a completely different idea. He said it is what comes from man's heart that makes him impure. Now, there were many things that Jesus proclaimed to make man impure. In Matthew 15, he includes bad desires, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, lies, gossip. However, to conservatives, it must be homosexuality, and everything else is not that bad. I mean, having a president or having people that govern your country who have been unfaithful to their loved ones, to the people they claim to be faithful for life, that's just fine. But if you are gay, homosexual, I don't know, you're turning the world upside down. I mean, if we really put the same brand of persecution for adultery that we do for homosexuality, most politicians would be out of a job, let alone some religious people. Now, I propose to you, at the sins of the heart are those that start before you start thinking about sex. It is about power and domination of others. How many have had their child come from school beaten up by a bully, or have had their child's property stolen by other children? The problem with the heart starts before sex ever takes place. However, it is ignored because we claim that, well, children are innocent, which is kind of true. But children are also groomed by their parents and by their church to triumph over others, more so than to have mercy or assist them. Their little brains start figuring out strategies to win, to get, to accomplish. and the means are seldom addressed. As long as you're part of their group, you're safe. Otherwise, you're fair game. This is a problem of the heart, which later leads to other abuses on a larger scale to win, to get, to accomplish. This is a reason for all wars. There is no homosexual community trying to take over Palestine. There is no LGBTQIA community trying to increase the price of goods and services. There's no LGBTQA community selling drugs or taking your government or trying to take over your government or stay in government. The problem with the morality is greed, the desire for power and money, and to not to make someone of your same sex love you if you are attracted to them, because that's also the thing. You'd have to be attracted to them. If you're not, then what are you worried about? These are conditions some of us live with. But it is not by any means the root of immorality. Immorality comes from powerful people trying to control others, to take their land through wars, through measly wages, through poor education, through denial of job opportunities, distribution and sale of weapons, and abuse of the working man. These are true morality problems that the hierarchy of most Christian associations hypocritically fails to address. They prefer to waste their flatulent efforts on persecuting and segregating their brothers and sisters who think and act differently. I ask you, how many times in history must we repeat the same horrible stance that claims that our brothers and sisters are somehow less than human or sinful just because we do not agree with their culture, their way of life, or ultimately their behaviors? And in so doing, lower our standards to those of animals which we claim to be superior to. Because that is the way of the lions, the hyenas, and any other social animal. Anyone who does not smell like their own tribe must be eliminated. There is no time to learn the behavior of others or understand. They must be annihilated and sent on their way. We are so much lower than them because we hurt each other because of a book written by men thousands of years ago who had no knowledge of science and its meaning. And we create our own interpretations of them to do what's darkness in our hearts in the name of God. Animals never stoop that low. At least they never use the name of God. The original sin, in my view, is that which negates the existence of others, the desire to remain within our own cave, away from the tree of knowledge, which ultimately is that which has brought us to this point. Had we not reached for that fruit, we would just be another set of well-trained monkeys with no choice to make, no future to discover, just mindless zombies obedient for some obscure reason. It all sounds nice, a completely congruent society, until it is your turn to have an individual thought that does not agree with the others. Then you act offended. You claim to be cancelled without considering how your obtuse way of thinking about religion denies not just speech, but the dignified existence of others. I think the 40 years that the Jewish people were spent on the desert was a lesson to understand that freedom requires responsibility, which by the power of having a brain, we have been granted that responsibility. This is not the time to back and try to be mindless, obedient servants to a book that was written by men who probably never saw God. There's no empirical evidence in any of these holy books which God is the real book. Maybe it's the Jews. Maybe it's the Muslims. Maybe it's the Hindus. I think a real wise and loving God would have planned for this so that his children would not kill each other in his name. On the other hand, Cain was a born murderer. Just like the sons of Satan to whom Jesus referred, if you were good, if you were of God, you would hear my voice. but you're not, so you listen to your father Satan. Satan, according to the book, loves war, violence, and abuse. He's not so much about loving couples, but about abusive and powerful men who sow seeds of anger and helplessness on their brothers and sisters. If we want to see God, we have chosen a path, one of intellect and learning. We have learned how vast the universe is. We have learned cures and genetics and all these things. We're not in the Bible or any holy book. We discover them. We have a responsibility to follow the path we have chosen and stop being cowards and continuously look back to the shore because we feel unsure, unsafe, because no one here today has talked to God. It is also highly likely that He who created our brains would be proud to see us use what He gave us, instead of being mindless slaves to old poetry and using it as an excuse to abuse our brothers and sisters and forcing them to walk like us. God Himself gave us free will, but we tend to remove it from others in the name of God. Homosexuality is another expression of love. We're just not used to it. We do not understand it. And to excuse our poor performance in creating a better world, we blame it on those who have the least power to protect themselves. Our beautiful LGBTQIA community has become our lepers. Yet we know what Jesus taught about that and how history and science have taught us. They were just people born that way, but chosen as scapegoats by the powerful. Homosexuality is as moral as being a leper or a left-handed person. It is a beautiful creation of God, if there be one. If not, it's just a random occurrence of nature, not a moral choice. We now have a pope that sees this reality, but men who crave power, like Strickland and Barron, claim that it is them and only them who have the power to speak for God. If that type of attitude and behavior is not a proverbial sin of hubris, disobedience, and moral violence against your brethren, I don't know what you could call a sin. Anyway, my friends, if you have been entertained by this video or this blog, follow, subscribe, whatever. I'll try to make more on the different current situations in our world. So anyways, have a good one. Press like and all this, and I will see you guys later.